AB30, so this is the Animal Farm, chapters 1 to 7. We have only 2 classes left. And so if you are needing to get caught up on Animal Farm summaries, this is your chance, okay? All summaries are due on Thursday. That's it, we're done. And Wednesday for the other class, so Wednesday, Thursday. If you need to extend it to Friday, you need to come give me a shout, okay? Have a conversation. Your final exam for Animal Farm is due Thursday. If you need extra time, you need to come talk to me, and that extra time, if given, will be just before 9 o'clock on Monday. Okay, so that would be your last day of classes. If it's not submitted in before 9 o'clock, that's it. Okay, so there'll be a zero mark for that one, or NHI not handed in. TED Talk presentations on your last day of classes, which is March 1st, and March for day 1, and day 2 March 2nd. And then there's no school on March 3rd, and then you start your Quint number 4 on March 4th. Okay, so be sure you're all up to date on that one. Okay, so I think that's all my updates. Check Google Classroom for all the other information and updates and things like that. So let's get into this, and it's going to go fairly quickly, at least that's the plan. If you need to pause it, and get what you need, and then be sure that you can submit it on the days that I have mentioned. So I'm going to screen share here, and let's get to it. So I think I'm just going to leave it like this, and then open up the slides that way. So Animal Farm by George Orwell, and we have chapter 1, The Dream of Revolution. I'm just going to paraphrase as we go along here, so again, you can pause accordingly. Mr. Jones is the owner of Manor Farm. He doesn't take care of the animals very well. Old Major is the patriarch, a father figure to all the animals. He's been around for quite a while, and he speaks of rebellion, that it's time for the animals to rise up against the humans for the way they've been treated, and this revolution will take place at some point, we don't know. And he stresses a maxim, a motto, that all men are enemies and all animals are comrades. And then of course they have the national anthem, The Beast of England, which I have sung in class, and I think I have the video on one of my playlists there, so you can enjoy that. All right, so we have chapter 2, Animalism is Born, Badges of Slavery and Rebellion. There was an uproar in the barn, and Jones came out at the end of chapter 1, fired off a shot from a shotgun, and so we have to assume that Old Major was hit by one of those shots, and he dies three days later. So the patriarch is dead, and so now it's like, well, what do we do? The revolution has died before it even started. So Snowball and Napoleon take up the reins of leadership, and of course they have differing approaches to how things should go, but they do come to an agreement that we will have a set of rules and guidelines. It's going to be called Animalism, and so we have, and whenever this revolution takes place, we will be prepared for it, because we'll be one united front. The humans had disregarded their duties and for taking care of the animals, and as a result, the animals were fed up, and so they revolted, and so they were able to expel the humans off the farm, and before they knew it, Manor Farm was theirs, and it was now renamed Animal Farm. So I have my historical connections there. You can take a look at that, and that's just one historical connection. There's many others, so you can look back at history, because history repeats itself quite often actually, and even more recently. Chapter 2, Slide 2, um, it is agreed by the animals, or more so by the pigs, as they share it with the animals, that the house would be kept as a museum. So remember that, and we're not going to touch it. And we come up with the 7 commandments, and so they're all listed there. Take note of um, the number 1. Take note of number 4. 3 actually later on, so a bit of foreshadowing there, and number 5, and number 6, and of course number 7. Huh. Well, the only one that's missing is number 2. So actually pay attention to all 7. All right, so then we find out there's some milk missing at the end of chapter 2, so we don't know where it went, but the animals don't know where it went. We know where it went, or we can suspect. Chapter 3, Blind Faith and Nationalism, Simplification of Commandments. The animals are working the farm. It's their farm. They're bringing the harvest more efficiently than it was brought in when Mr. Jones was running the farm. And we have a new creed or maxim or motto, I will work harder. So that's maxim number 2. Every Sunday there would be a ritual of raising the flag, and of course singing Beast of England as well. Snowball and Napoleon were the great debaters on the farm. Snowball would say one thing, Napoleon would say the other, so, or to the contrary of, and so they're going back and forth. So we have the early development or creation of 2 factions on the farm, and so this will lead to a bit of divisiveness later on, so stay tuned to that. The pigs secretly, and to some degree, learn various different skills, and of course the big one is the reading and the writing. And so if you can read, you can write, you have power. That's knowledge. And so the pigs have that, but the other animals don't. So we're already seeing a split from the, if I go back to number 7, all animals are equal. We're not seeing that anymore with the fact that the pigs are educating themselves and the other animals are not. We have Snowball attempts to educate the other animals, and had this would have been a success on Snowball's part, then a good portion of the population would be elevated, and they'd be more aware of what's going on and be able to speak up accordingly and things like that, provide some insights and whatever the case, but they're not very successful. So that's detrimental to the other animals. But the pigs continue to learn and things like that, so it's more power to the pigs and less to the rest of the animals. And we have 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. All 7 commandments are now shrunk to just 1 maxim, and that's our 3rd one. They're still up there on the barn, but if you don't read them, learn them, understand them, and continue to teach them to other to the next generation, things like that, they're going to forget what those commandments are or what they mean or where they came from, stuff like that. And so if you just rely solely on 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, you're missing a lot. And the pigs know what they are, but the rest of the animals don't, or they forget, or they suspect they remember seeing it somewhere at some point. But of course, if you don't follow up or validate or things like that, you're going to forget, and you're going to be on the losing side of any battle that you were confronted with. Napoleon took no interest in the committees. He's more behind the scenes, and that's going to benefit Napoleon down the line, so stay tuned for that. We have some puppies that are born, and Napoleon takes those puppies, and we don't hear anything about those puppies for quite a long time. So stay tuned to find out what happens to those puppies. Missing milk was the mystery of the missing milk was solved, and the apples too. They're going to the pigs. The animals are like, why are you getting the milk and the apples? And so then the first sign of fear factoring comes in. Hey, if you don't want us to have the milk and the apples, Jones will come back. Well, the other animals are like, well, we don't want Jones to come back. Well, then you know what you have to give up, the milk and the apples. So they do. Okay? So the pigs realize that they can keep using that attempt to control the animals by all they have to do is say, hey, if you don't want us to have it, then Jones will come back. Okay? So fear factoring to maintain control. Chapter 4, spreading the message, battle of the cowshed, cost of war. The other farms are hearing about the fact that the animals have control of the farm. They don't like it. And of course, Jones is complaining to anybody who's going to listen that this is a travesty. This should not be happening. So then the humans start spreading rumors to discredit the animals, but things are going quite well on the farm at this point anyways. And other animals on the other farms are picking up the Beasts of England national anthem, and so then the humans have to put an end to it right away. And so any animal that sings Beasts of England is flogged. There's a and I have historical references there. The humans try to reclaim the farm and they attack it. We have a 5-wave attack. It's air, ground, retreat, regroup, attack. And so take it from the history books of warfare. So you attack them from air, create as much damage as much as possible, and then employ the ground attack, finish off, clean up, whatever you need to do, but then get to a point where you retreat, give the other side a false sense of victory or security, and so while you're retreating, you're regrouping, getting your resources in one area that you have chosen to finish the battle, and then you attack one final attack, and the war is over. Okay? And Snowball leads the attack. He's injured but continues on. So remember that part. Okay? The humans flee, the animals are victorious. Napoleon is nowhere to be seen, but don't forget that part, because we're going to see how the story of this battle is going to be spun later on. I did ask the question, how far are you willing to go to be free? And is our definition of freedom the same? So is your definition of freedom the same as, say, your neighbor or your best friend, that kind of stuff? So this opens up the opportunity for discussion and find, where your similarities and differences run in regards to freedom. Napoleon comes out and makes everyone think he had played a role in it, and the animals are none the wiser. As far as they're concerned, Napoleon was involved, but we all know that he was not, because he's more the behind-the-scenes kind of character. Snowball and Boxer are decorated for their dedication to the battle, and of course they would celebrate the revolution and of course the battle on separate dates. Chapter 5, loyalties, questions, conflicted beliefs and values, coercion and force, fear factoring. This is part 1 of the climax. Molly disappears 3 days later. She did very little on the farm anyway, except look at herself in the mirror or in the water. Very narcissistic. She did not want to have anything to do with any of the work that was being done on the farm. So she's out of the picture. It was decided that the pigs would make all the decisions now, so there's no debate, discussion, or anything like that. And I have my historical references there as well. Now, we do have ratification by a majority vote, so there's still a bit of democracy present here, or the appearance of democracy. Snowball and Napoleon are countermanding each other. Like I said, Snowball would say one thing, Napoleon would say the other, or countermand what Snowball says. So that's your division, and we have our two factions. And then behind the scenes, Napoleon would silently canvass support, and so that when the next meeting came around, he would have his support. So that's your coercion. We have also the drowning out of whenever Snowball spoke. We'd have the sheep bleeding, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, over and over again, to the point where the other animals would not be able to hear the Snowball's take on things, his validations, things like that. They'd miss out on that, and of course, and then the sheep would be quiet when Napoleon would speak. And then so the animals would only hear what Napoleon heard, and so then they miss out on an opportunity. And there's a lot of opportunities missed by the other animals. Snowball talked about improvements, and it was getting to the point where Snowball was actually gaining support, and Napoleon saw this, and so then he squeals and makes a loud squeal. 9 dogs come roaring in and chase Snowball off the farm, and he's expelled. And so Snowball is now living in exile. We don't know where Snowball is, but we are going to find out that Snowball's going to be used as a scapegoat, and that he's been living in certain parts and even coming back in the farm, so just stay tuned for that. The dogs protected Napoleon just like they would with Mr. Jones. So we have some very eerie similarities between Mr. Jones and Napoleon, and but the power has shifted from Snowball / Napoleon to just Napoleon, and now we have a militaristic control. The dogs are the military, and we have our leader Napoleon, and of course our spinner of information, Squealer. Okay, so we have fear, promoting silence. We have a lot of propaganda, repetition of words. I talked about that in class. So the more you hear a phrase or a word, the sooner you will start to believe that is fact when in reality it's not. So, and again, if you educate yourself, you read up on the topic at hand, you see the both sides of the story or both sides of the coin, and then you can make a more formal, well-rounded conclusion. But the animals don't get that, or they don't have the skill set to do that, and so they're only getting one side of the story, or whatever Napoleon says. And of course, maxim number 4 is Napoleon is always right. So whatever Napoleon says through Squealer, Napoleon or Boxers said it must be right then, because it's coming from Napoleon. But again, if you were educated and you were up to speed on what's going on with events, current events, the political landscape, that kind of stuff, you would be able to make a more formal conclusion. But these animals are not making that, or they don't have the ability to make a formal conclusion. The windmill project will proceed, despite the fact that Napoleon was against it before the expulsion of Snowball. And of course, the animals do actually question the fact that Napoleon did present his lack of interest in the windmill, but Squealer will spin it accordingly to make it look like that was all a ploy in order to root out the true enemy, which was Snowball, and get him out of the picture. Chapter 6, redefinition of freedom, trade with the enemy, amendments of commandments, and scapegoating again. So we've seen some blame placed on Mr. Jones, for example. We're now seeing the blame placed on Snowball. So anything that goes wrong on the farm or with situations or whatever, it's Snowball's fault. The animals are working 60-hour weeks. That's like a full-time job and a part-time job. So many people do that in our world today. They may even be having 2 part-time jobs and a full-time job. So they might be working more than 60-hour a week. So, but the animals are working. This is more than they had worked on than when Jones was in charge. Volunteer labor is offered on Sundays. Hey, you got a choice to work or take Sundays off, but you lose your rations. So the animals go, well, I don't want to lose my rations, so I guess I'll have to work Sundays. But the offer is still there. So on the surface, it looks like they have some bit of freedom of choice, when in fact they don't have the choice. Boxer's warned not to overdo things, and he was also warned by Old Major in Chapter 1 not to overdo things as well. So this is 1, 2. So this is 2 strikes or warnings against Boxer to watch what he's doing, because it's going to, if he gets one more, it's going to lead to the downfall of Boxer. We have the announcement that Napoleon's going to have to make do some business with the humans. That was Old Major stated right from the beginning that the animals should not have any business or do any business with the humans when this revolution occurs. That Napoleon's breaking that, very similar to a non-aggression pact. And we have animals protest about it, but Squealer spins it and says that there's no proof that Old Major said it. There's nothing written down. It was just, he said it orally, but you have no proof over there. So if you can produce the proof, I dare you. Then if you can prove that Old Major said it, then great, show me the proof. But if you can't show me the proof, then it's hearsay. So it creates doubt in the animal's credibility. And so the animals just go along with it. Humans are willing to trade with animal farms, especially now that it's flourishing. And so if they can get something out of this, then great. And it's not extra work for them. The animals are doing all the work. So if they can do some trade, then great. The pigs move into the farmhouse. And remember, the farmhouse was supposed to be kept up as or maintained as a museum. But the pigs are now living in it. And they're also sleeping in the beds. Now, if you remember one of the commandments, no animal shall sleep in a bed. But we see that an amendment has taken place, and we see, and it says now no animal shall sleep in a bed with sheets. And so Squealer's able to spin it that we have nothing against beds, but we do have something against sheets. Okay, so and it's how it's spun, and the animals again take Squealer as word, and it sounds logical, so they go along with it. They don't question it. They don't investigate it. They don't inquire. They don't, things like that. And because they don't do that, they don't have power, and they can't. It creates doubt in their mind. So it's if you don't want to have doubt anymore, you believe what that person is telling you. So it must be true. Windmill is half complete, but it's destroyed by the weather. But Squealer and Napoleon are able to spin it to make it sound like that snowball came in and destroyed the windmill. But then nothing's mentioned about the rocking of the buildings and the shingles coming off the barn, the roofs of the buildings, that kind of stuff. Nobody mentions that part. Of course, the animals have forgotten about it. And so they believe that Snowball is the reason why the windmill was destroyed. And Napoleon goes, hey, I found footprints. It leads to the hedge here. There's a hole in the hedge. Well, if you remember when Snowball was chased off the farm, he went through that hedge, and there's still a hole there. So they are Snowball's footprints, and nobody questions it. But the fact that he's, you know, is Snowball going through that hole in the hedge, in and out, back and forth, nobody checks it out. They don't validate it. The only validation they do make is that Napoleon's saying it, so he must be right. All right, chapter 7, propaganda versus perseverance, job action, dissension, and blame, banning of the traditions. This is part 3 of the climax. And so the winter is cold. We have Boxer working, I will work harder, and the maxim to promote propaganda over perseverance. And we have food shortages, and the animals conceal their dilemma from the humans by making them think that all is well. And the hens rebel, and Napoleon has starved himself into submission, but not before 9 died because of the rebellion. And guess who was blamed for that? Snowball. Squealer states they found documents, but since the animals can't read, they believe the papers that Squealer's holding up is proof that Snowball is the cause, and he was an agent of Jones. So we have maxim number 5, death to humanity as well. And then we have the execution of the animals as they confess and admit that they were in league with Snowball all along. And finally, the bloody purge took place, and now Napoleon has total control over everything. And it becomes Clover could not articulate her feelings regarding what was happening. She says it in her head, and if she had the skill set or the ability to speak it, she would have, but she can't. And so the only thing that she can do is sing Beasts of England in a mournful manner, and it's just like a funeral. And then Squealer says, hey, you can't sing Beasts of England anymore, and it's been banned, so now we will have a new national anthem from now on. So that's where we left off. That is chapters 1 to 7. So if you have any questions, please let me know, and stay tuned for chapters 8, 9, and 10. Take care, be safe.